Can the Texans get their first win of the season back home at NRG with the Titans coming to town? That shouldn't be a question, but I guess we're going to ask it on this edition of the Bullpen.
To throw the punches. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Tagged down for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to the Bullpen. As always, I am James Roy. Tom is currently on vacation, but he'll be back next week. So you just have me for the week. And today we're going to talk about Texans matchup with the Titans. Usually shouldn't be a question how this is going to go, but I do have a lot of respect for divisional matchups, and it did play out last season that the Titans managed to beat the Texans, even though they are clearly a very bad team. I can't say they're clearly worse than the Texans based off current record. They only have a worse record because they have lighter strength of schedule. They are the same. They're both winless teams, but one team will come out of this with a win. I'm trying to stay away from calling this a get-right game for the Texans because even a win here, I don't know if that's going to do much. Feels kind of like a drop in the bucket at this point. Just looking wide scope, right? The Texans will be playing the Titans, and even if they win, they will be 1-3 going into a matchup against the Ravens, and then they'll have the bye week. So through the first 5 weeks of the season, even with a win this week, most reasonable people would guess that the Texans enter the bye week at 1-4. Not a good place to be if you're interested in winning your division and have playoff aspirations, but those are quickly fading for the Texans. So we'll just talk about the matchups for this. The one that sticks out to me is Calvin Ridley. This is a player I've always been, pretty low on since he got to the Titans. I think that taking a year-long suspension and coming back was always going to be difficult. A lot of people look at the player that he was before that and think that that's what he's going to be now, although I guess they probably don't think that anymore with how he's been. He got called out in the press conference. He was targeted 7 times last week, only hauled in one of the targets. And the Titans coach Callahan said, we're not going to stop relying on Calvin Ridley. We just need him to step up. And they do need him to step up because that team otherwise is looking at a bunch of rookies at wide receiver that would do well for themselves to step up. I believe it's who'd they draft out of Florida? Dyke was his last name. And then they've also got Eliak Iomanor, who played pretty well at Stanford, had a really good game against Travis Hunter in his collegiate career. Was a guy I really liked for the Texans in the second round. He ended up slipping a little further in the draft, but looking at this Texans defense, I think that if there was ever a game where any signs of cracks would be a little frustrating, it's this one. A rookie quarterback who has had some flash plays but hasn't quite established himself yet. And an offensive line that I don't want to say it's worse than the Texans. I would say it's in the same general ballpark. You would hope that this defense can get in there and make something happen. I know Derek Stingley's day to day, at least after the game. This is obviously recorded a little earlier in the week relative to when it's going to be released. So Derek Stingley could be called good to go by the time that you see this, but as far as we know right now, he may or may not play. I don't think that should make a difference. I think that this Texans defense should be able to hold against the Titans offense that hasn't really proven itself, but the Jaguars tried to hand us a game, and as a team, the Texans didn't really do much to try and take it. So I'm not counting anything as guaranteed. And if there was one thing I thought was guaranteed about this Texans team, it was having a top 5 defense, but that simply put has not played out outside of the points allowed per game this season. So looking at that matchup, I'm interested to see how that plays out. Flipping it around and looking at the Titans defense, one thing that sticks out is that T'Vondre Sweat is on IR. so he will not be in the lineup. That's a huge win for the Texans. They've kind of had an on and again, off again run game, and Nick Caley has said that he wants to be a run first team. Not having Tavondre Sweat on the field is instantly beneficial for your run game because he is a guy who can clog up some gaps in the middle. So this Titans defense is at a disadvantage. You look at a lot of the talent on this team is players that I mean, the Titans effect doesn't just affect wide receivers that have aged that are signing with that team and instantly looked washed. I think that a lot of once good defenders go to Tennessee to show up in a washed status, and that's kind of the theme. L'Jarius Sneed has not looked good in a Titans uniform. Really, the biggest benefit they have is along their defensive line in Simmons. But outside of that, I wouldn't say there's anything that concerns me from the Titans side. I think it realistically comes down to, can the Texans put together a coherent offense that can move the ball? And even with an opponent like the Titans, I'm going to need to see it to believe it. But if there was ever a game in this early phase of the season where the Texans have faced two NFC Super Bowl contenders and another member of a division that has lived up to its reputation as one of the worst in football, this is one. I mean, the Jaguars and Titans are two opponents that if you ever needed I'm trying to stay away from, like I said, the get right game term, but if you ever needed a win, you'd want to be facing those teams. I think that we need to talk about the divisional rule. I've said it before, but I need to establish it here. I definitely mentioned it last week, and it comes up a lot. This division, it has been historically bad at times, and there have been times where Texans are really good, but you cannot discount a divisional matchup. They're the teams that play you the most. They're the teams that know you well. And I would suspect that this Titans team will play the Texans better than most would expect to be played by the Titans because of that. And so I'm not going to, obviously in the matchup review, I kind of alluded to the fact that this Texans team should be able to handle the Titans, but on top of the Texans not really showing well, this being a divisional matchup, it's important to respect and honor the divisional rule. So I will, be cautious in how I predict this. That being said, this is probably the last game that I will predict the Texans to win in for a minute. I hate that it's come to that. I mean, I kind of expected the Ravens game to be a game where I could predict the Texans to lose, but I just don't anticipate there being a game on the schedule that feels like a Texans win for sure for a long time, until we see something from this Texans team, or until the season ends and we get more certainty on if there's any vision or any care effort from this Texans team to do what they promised the fans they would do and win football games. So with that, we'll move into the score predictions. This is going to be a short one. Usually when I have Tom on, there's a little more back and forth, a little more to discuss. But even then, these previews are usually pretty short and shortened to the point. So looking at this Texans game, it's in Houston. The Titans and the Jaguars are a set of teams that when I predict the season, I generally split a 3-3 prediction, and I generally give the Texans a win in Jacksonville and a loss in NRG, and then I give them the win in NRG against the Titans and a loss in Tennessee. So this one's in Houston. So I'm going to give it to the Texans. And this is a game that I'll probably predict as a Texans win episode to episode, both times this season, because that's just kind of how I view it. But if I'm looking at it and I'm assessing, the fact that the Titans and Texans are both not necessarily juggernauts, I'm gonna give a comically low score prediction because I just don't have a lot of faith in either team to produce a significant amount of offense. But I'll say this plays very similarly to the Jaguars game, which is the kind of game that you beg all offseason. You say, "Oh, I would watch that game just to get some football." And I think that if you pulled that game out and you showed it to someone who had been 2 or 3 months removed from the previous NFL season, they'd probably tell you they could wait a little bit before watching it. Give it some time. They might not even give it the time of day when the season's actually in full swing. So I'm going to go with a 10-7 score prediction in favor of the Texans. I think that the Texans go up quick with a touchdown, and then there's a lot of back and forth with no scoring. The Titans come out strong in the second half because I don't think the Texans will be able to defer the kickoff. Every game this season they have received the first kick. I think teams know that the Texans like to set the tone with their defense, and so they don't want to give them that opportunity. So I'd say the Titans come out pretty gung-ho at the start of the first half and score a touchdown to tie it up. And then once again, a lot of nothing until later in the fourth quarter. The Texans, I'd put it in a similar boat to what they did in Jacksonville, not in Jacksonville, against the Buccaneers with the blocked punt. Instead of a blocked punt, I'll go with, an interception that sets them up in a really good spot. Not a lot of offensive movement, but it's late in the fourth and they run the clock out significantly, kick the field goal. The Titans get another shot with the ball. They show a little flash at the start of the drive, but end up ultimately conceding. They turn it over on downs, and the Texans kneel it out and get their first win of the 2025 season. Did not think at any point in the offseason that would be the way it would happen. Had to believe in my head that they could get a win in one of the first 3 games of the season, but I guess that's just not what was in the cards for this team. So yeah, with that, thanks for tuning in to the Bullpen. I've been James Roy, flying solo this week. Here's to hoping the Texans can beat the Titans. If you want to find me on social media, is at James Roy NFL, wherever you get your social media. If you're new to the Bullpen, usually I have Tom here with me and we have a good time talking about the Texans. I'm hoping he still is down to have a good time talking about the Texans after the way they've played so far. I know he is, because we're both diehards, gluttons for punishment, ready to watch this Texans team disappoint us for, not the first time in their history. But we'll be here for it, here to talk about it and, have a good time. So if you're new to the Bullpen, make sure you set up your notifications, subscribe or sign up wherever you're listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you tune in for the live in the middle of the week. That's more interactive portion on Wednesdays. And yeah, we'd love to have you. We're glad that you're here listening to the #1 veteran-owned Texans podcast in the world until proven otherwise. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Take the handoff. Stroud